Okay, our developing story for you here on the News Hour. There is an ongoing escalation in the situation, violence in the Belarusian capital, Minsk. The internet was shut down in the last 90 minutes or so. The police are saying they've detained at least 250 demonstrators who are gathering for another protest in Minsk. They're standing by their demands that President Alexander Lukashenko's resignation, ever since he was declared the winner of last month's disputed election, that's what they want. They want him to go. Critics say the vote was rigged. More than 10,000 women defied a government crackdown to rally in the city on Saturday for the 35th consecutive day. Our correspondent, Step Varson, is in the thick of it. We will try and establish communications with her. Clearly, we have no internet link. Telephone lines are maybe a bit questionable as well. We will go to Step Varson just as soon as we establish comms with her. We'll stay with these latest pictures. We'll also now talk to our correspondent in Moscow. That's Alexandra Godefroy. What kind of reception do we think Mr. Lukashenko will receive when he arrives in Russia to meet Mr. Putin?
Well, you see the relationship between these two, between the Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko and Russian one, Vladimir Putin, has never been an easy one. It was a complex relationship of love and hate, where Lukashenko was, before these elections and before he started having such big problems in his own country, he was sort of trying to play an upper hand, sometimes winning it, sometimes losing it. So because he got this so much needed support from Russia and from its President Vladimir Putin, it is clearly who has the upper hand in these negotiations. Now, he got support. Russia is one of the few countries that recognize him as the winner of the disputed elections, and Russia is clearly stating that, yes, he is the president, and this is the matter, that is internal matter of what is happening in Belarus, and that it is not the oppositional council members, the ones that should anyone talk to. Actually, they're saying that there is countries meddling in these elections and warning everybody off from that. President Putin even said that there is a reserve unit prepared if things get really out of control, reserve unit here in Russia that will be sent as a help to the Belarus if needed, if certain red lines are crossed. So what we do expect tomorrow is that these are going to be negotiations that in which the upper hand will be and the cards will be in the hands of Putin. Now, Russia has been pushing for finalizing or wrapping it up the organization called Union State between Russia and Belarus, to which Lukashenko was quite resistant to finalizing it. And they're doing that now. We could hear this organization mentioned numerous times, saying that they are supposed to protect each other, the constitution, democratic rights, and so forth and so on. So it is expected by some analysts here that Russia might be pushing, now that it has the opportunity to do so, for some sort of integration with Belarus, though here they're denying use of such word or a merger we could hear, but in Kremlin they're saying, no, it's not about that. These are going to stay two sovereign countries, whatever happens.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Alexandra Godefroy. For the moment, Alexandra, thank you very much. We have established communications with Al Jazeera's correspondent, Step Varson, who, 15, 20 minutes ago, she was in the middle of what was going on. Not what you're looking at right now. She was with the demonstrators going to that central point in Minsk for the protest. Step, just take us through what's happening.
I'm here in the middle of thousands of protesters right now, marching towards one of Lukashenko's residences. We've passed several areas with lots of police and military on guard, but because this is such a large group, it's very hard to estimate how many people are here, but it's probably tens of thousands. So police and military have left this group alone, despite the fact that in the beginning of this rally, hundreds were detained, snatched from the streets, driven off in a van by masked men. And I'm actually walking here towards a group of women. They're also wearing the same masks as these policemen do, just to make a protest about it, telling the people here that this is like cruel, that this is not part of how Belarus should be. people should not be in fear and being intimidated, being snatched off the street in broad daylight just for walking on the streets, maybe possibly carrying a flag. So people are angry, but the mood is very upbeat, I have to say. There's a lot of music, and people are very impressed by the fact that despite these detentions and the repression we've seen in the last week, that they still managed to gather. They're now singing, "We will win, we will survive, we will overcome." So this is the mood, and there's also children here, older people, people from literally all walks of life are gathering here now.
As you were finishing off that answer there, Step, we cut to some pictures of a young female demonstrator being taken away and piled into the back of what looks like, oh, pardon me, I thought she was going to be put into the side of the back of a blue VW van there, but she's actually being taken further away from the vantage point of the camera. As you were explaining what was going on there, Step, we were looking at a shot clearly taken by somebody on a cell phone, a mobile telephone, looking down at this huge arching turning road with several thousand people on its way. I'm going to assume, Step, that you're in amongst all the people. We've now re-racked the pictures. We're looking at those, heading towards one of Mr. Lukashenko's residences there in Minsk. If he's in that building and they know he's in the building, is there potential there for that to become not just a protest, but a confrontation and a flashpoint?
That's definitely something he's been very worried about. The second Sunday, when the protesters also headed towards his residence at the palace here, he actually showed up in body armor, carrying a Kalashnikov, and he was riding in a helicopter above the crowd. And I've spoken to experts here, analysts who have been following his career and also been writing a biography about him, and they said that that was definitely a sign of fear. So he's very worried, of course, that this crowd will go for him. But so far, and they have been stressing this over and over again, their means are peaceful. There's never been any real violence done by these protesters, except from what I saw, throwing some plastic bottles. There have not been any attempts to really turn this movement into a violent one, because they know very well that if that happens, that's exactly what Lukashenko and also Russia might be waiting for. And that's the sign for them to interfere, actually, across, come here with their troops. Because, sorry, there's an noise around me. But Putin has already announced that he has a contingent of troops ready on the other side of the border to come any moment. This situation is out of control. So everyone is very aware of that risk, and they keep it as peaceful as possible. At the moment, I'm just surrounded people carrying flags, carrying children, clapping their hands, singing songs. So that's the mood right now.
Do those demonstrators that you're marching with, well, you're not marching with them, Step, you're reporting on their protest, do they know the internet's been cut?
The internet is totally cut. That's why I'm speaking to you on the phone. And the reason is, of course, because these demonstrations have been directed by social media. There are Telegram channels that are posting the information for these protesters where they know they can gather. And that's why the authorities have been blocking the internet every Sunday to make sure that they're not gathering together. But they still managed to do so, obviously.
We are now reporting here on this channel, Step, that the internet provider was asked by the government to shut down the internet. We don't know how long for, but is there an expectation there that, you know, it's autocracy 101, isn't it? If you want to make sure, or try to make sure, that word doesn't get out of the country about what you're doing or what you're about to do, you shut down internet. But the irony is, somebody will always spend the money on 4G or 5G, and then reporters like yourself, you're there talking to us on an old-fashioned telephone.
Exactly. There's always a way out, and that's also how this Telegram channel is operating. They managed to evade these internet blockades for some reason, so that's why you can still see footage coming in, video material that's actually filmed by citizens who have been sending this footage to other people so it can be spread around. So it's very hard to block all this because, of course, this is the 21st century. And Lukashenko has been accused of living in the past, that his ideas were all outdated, that he still has this old Soviet mentality, and that the economy in the country is also still run in the Soviet style that's not suitable for this time anymore. And that's exactly why these people here, they want a different future for the children, which is more modern and has more opportunities.
Okay, Step, do stay close. Thanks very much for getting us up to date on what's going on there. If you're just joining us here on the News Hour, what you're looking at are a mishmash of the latest pictures coming to us out of the Belarusian capital, Minsk. You can see there the security forces have been deployed to either try to kettle away from the main thrust of the protest and the protesters as they make their way in their thousands to one of the presidential compounds. The president, of course, being Alexander Lukashenko. He says he won the election 4 or 5 weeks ago. The protesters say, no, you didn't. They say it was rigged. Was it free and fair? Impossible to know because, as we've been reporting again over the past 4 or 5 weeks, neutral election observers in certain situations at certain times in the run-up to the vote and on the day of the vote were not given proper access to that vote. So we have not had an authoritative, trustworthy statement from anyone who you would trust to say, yes, the election was free and fair. They want him to go. They are marching in their thousands now towards one of his residencies. And as Step Vasson was saying there, one of the issues is they know, Mr. Lukashenko knows that he is not looking forward to that situation, to put it mildly, where he's in his residence, if he's in the building that they are walking towards, and have thousands or tens of thousands of protesters outside, because both sides are digging in here. Let's stay with the latest pictures and bring in Peter Zalmeyev. He's joining us on Skype from Kiev in Ukraine. Now, he is the executive director of the Eurasia Democracy Initiative. Welcome to the News Hour, sir. Just take me through your reaction to what we're seeing happening on the streets of Minsk.
Well, we're seeing a culmination of, I would say, 3 weeks, or actually a month, of a truly popular uprising that has as its aim, as its sole aim, the ouster of a man who has ruled this country with an iron fist for a quarter of a century. The people that are out on the streets have not been protesting against the Kremlin. They have not been appealing to any European values, which is distinguishing this particular revolution that we're witnessing from that happened in Ukraine 6 years ago. The one goal the protesters have is to get rid of the guy, and they're doing it in a spectacularly democratic fashion with no single leader, with the leadership dispersed, and with a truly kind of popular, it's a true popular uprising, the likes of which Belarus has never witnessed.
Why is it, though, you know, we're 4 or 5 weeks into this process now, why is it, though, no side is either winning or no side is, on the other hand of that debate, giving in to the other? No one seems to be able to deal a killer blow here on the part of either the president or the demonstrators.
Well, it's a very good question. And on the part of Lukashenko, we're seeing that he is able to hold on just enough simply because he has retained the loyalty of his security services. That has not wavered, with few exceptions. The big unknown remains Vladimir Putin, who has sent contradictory signals, but is yet, from what we have been able to see, unwilling to contemplate a victory by a street protest, which will create a very unpleasant precedent for Russia and for Putin's rule. When it comes to the protesters, I think we're witnessing truly that the Belarusians are finally waking up after their 70 years of the Soviet rule and 25 years of this guy. They are willing to shake off their fear, but for right now, their protest has been peaceful. And the big debate is whether they will, consider taking a militant action against Lukashenko. And there are indications now that certain defense brigades, as they're called, are being formed. So before long, we may see an armed uprising. And in that situation, all bets are off. And Lukashenko is counting on Putin introducing troops to quell the uprising.
Okay, forgive me if I'm sounding a bit OCD about this, Peter, but are you saying an armed uprising because the security services basically stage a coup, and they start fighting with their own weapons alongside the protesters? Are you saying that's a possibility here?
I'm saying the protesters themselves are arming, whether it be Molotov cocktails, sticks, stones, light weapons. We are going to be seeing some of that simply because there is that sort of standoff that's not moving either here nor there, as you mentioned. And as is often the case in such situations, these things have a tendency of turning violent, And there's also a scenario you cannot discount, and that scenario would have Russian or Lukashenko provocateurs trying to come across as protesters and inciting violence so that Lukashenko has an excuse to welcome Russian tanks in order to quell the uprising. But once again, we are not certain as to what Vladimir Putin's moves will be. I'm not so sure he's going to be willing to support a very unpopular president. So he, just like any of us experts who are now guessing what's going to happen next, I will guarantee you Putin himself is daily calculating the odds of this or that move on his part. He does not know what's going to happen himself. The situation is very unpredictable and combustible at the same time. And also you cannot, of course, discount the possibility of a coup that you mentioned, but for right now, we are not seeing those signs yet.
Okay, Peter Zalmeyev in Kiev, in Ukraine. Great to get your insight on this, Peter. We'll talk to you again, I'm sure, in the future. For the meantime, thank you very much. Joining us on the phone out of Minsk is Yaroslav Romanchuk. He's formerly a Belarusian presidential candidate. Mr. Romanchuk, welcome to the NewsHour here on Al Jazeera. When you see the pictures...
Yeah, my pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, sir. When you see the pictures we're broadcasting, when you see thousands of people demonstrating again for Mr. Lukashenko to go, when we see young, old men and women being bundled to the ground and bundled into the backs of vans again, when we see hundreds of women peacefully demonstrating once a week again, what goes through your mind at that point?
I'm just back from another demonstration, and that's joy, that's happiness, that determination to get rid of the dictatorship, that's the peaceful and orderly nature. I do not see that it would turn violent unless the authorities turn into using weapons instead of just watching and grabbing demonstrators. Yesterday we had about 300 persons who were detained by police. Today I think that the demonstrators began with detention. So the authorities are using these tactics to start to detain people before and right after if people do not form the crowd. Of course, everybody is waiting for tomorrow's meeting between Putin and Lukashenko. Putin definitely is at a crossroad because he definitely would use the assistance. He would aid Lukashenko in the military and paramilitary way, but that would infuriate Belarusians, and that would add definitely more resistance to Russian aggression, and Putin would be called aggressor alongside with Lukashenko. The Kremlin doesn't want it to happen. That's why it wants Lukashenko to somehow start a dialogue. But Lukashenko is still adamant, and he believes that he could go on without any dialogue, and he would reappoint himself as for the presidency once again. So that's a deadlock. But the determination of the people, of Belarusians, is not dying out. And I was in Grodno yesterday, the same kind of spirit. I was in Brest a week ago, the same kind of spirit. So it's not only Minsk, it's the whole country is against the regime. And I think it's a matter of time before Lukashenko has to give up and start a negotiation on the transition of power.
Okay, lots to unpack with what you've just been saying to us there, Mr. Romanchuk. Let's talk about that meeting tomorrow first off, as we continue breaking down these latest pictures out of Minsk. So, Mr. Lukashenko walks into a handshake photo-op conversation with Vladimir Putin. How does that conversation go?
They are not on friendly terms, to put it mildly. Lukashenko campaigned for a long time against the Kremlin, against the Putin, accusing Russia of trying to have a political merger between Russia and Belarus. And essentially it was Lukashenko who broke Putin's plan to stay in power for another 16 years. I mean, Putin had to stake this constitutional referendum. So the relations between Belarus and Russia are on the lowest possible level in trade terms, in integration terms. So there is like cold animosity or cold friendship between them. But at the same time, there is like different points of view in Russia on what to do. Generals supporting Lukashenko because they've been working with him for a long time. People who do economic policy definitely don't like to have any military, any intervention into Belarus, realizing that Lukashenko is the guy who would never keep his word, his promise.
Okay, Mr. Romanchuk, I'm going to interrupt you for a second, sir, for which I apologise, but I do just want to get to one final brief point. The protesters are saying Lukashenko is going to go. You're saying Lukashenko is going to go. Mr. Putin may say to him, Mr. Lukashenko, you've got to go. What is it about Mr. Lukashenko that makes him so supremely unself-aware of how other people see him?
The major factor is that he could not have failed to resist evil, and he is associated with evil himself. That's the fundamental point that makes everybody believe that he must go.
Oh, and I think we've lost the line there from Minsk. Yes, we have. OK, we were talking there to Yaroslav Romanchuk, a former Belarusian presidential candidate. Apologies for that. You know, live television, these things happen. We'll go back to him if we can, but we did manage to get a good sense of what his take is on the latest situation there. You can see it unfolding pretty much in real time. Thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of people are making their way towards one of Alexander Lukashenko's presidential residencies in the middle of Minsk. Is he inside the building? We don't know. Is he anticipating this kind of protest? Yes, very probably. The internet has been cut. Did he issue a direct order to have the internet pulled the plug on it? Yes, he probably did, because the internet provider has confirmed to various news agency and news suppliers that they were asked by the Belarusian government to make sure that the internet was not working. But as is the way with modern technology, we are able to get you the latest pictures and correspondence and analysts on the ground and also in Russia and in Ukraine. We will go back to that evolving story for you just as soon as we can.